Good morning, everyone. I'd like to think that my presentation here is a little bit more humanized because I'm coming to you as a teacher. But more importantly, those people who know me know how passionate I am about being an English teacher. So a lot of what I have to say today is focused on English writing, whether it's a first additional or if it's a home language learner. But a lot of what our previous speakers spoke of, I feel like we're at Impaq, we are already trying to integrate a lot of that thinking. We have policies in place that are there to protect our learners. We have policies in place that protect our educators, but they're obviously, they're organic. They have to keep evolving as things change. So it makes me feel really good and reassured that as an institution that focuses on distance learning, that we're on the right track. But I want to ground us here today in the idea that we still need educators. We still need teachers in all of this. So yes, AI can answer an exam paper. AI can create an exam paper. It can develop the marking guidelines for an exam paper. But we still need to take those little kids that come into our class, whether through the screen or in a brick and mortar building, and we still need to develop their brains. We need to train their brains. And that's where I think the human teacher is still so important in all of this. So yes, AI for me is a learning tool that the learner can make use of, but it's a teaching tool that the teacher can make use of. And I think that's what we need to reassure ourselves with, because that's our job. And it's why I became a teacher. For whatever reason, our role is to train the brain at the end of the day. So I do have a whole script that I've written down. People who know me, again, will know that I'm very passionate, guys. When I start talking about English and I start, especially about creative writing, I can just go on and on and on, all right? But a lot of what I have to say here today is based on my marking experience here at Sakai. So a lot of what I have to say, we see it in practice at the end of the year when we're marking the NSC paper. Because of that marking experience, I go back to my institution, and it's what I tell my markers to do as well. I tell them, take this knowledge back to your schools, whether it's a distance learning institution like ours is, or whether it is a brick and mortar, and apply this thinking, this training that we are expecting from them. All right. So a lot of what I have to say is based on that. I am, at the end of the day, first and foremost, a teacher. I'm not an AI specialist. I force myself to keep up to date with it because it's cool. It's really cool what's happening out there. All right. But at the end of the day, my first job is to train the brain of that learner who's sitting in my classroom. So what I thought I would do today is provide you with a little bit more of a practical, it's going to be English-based and it is creative writing-based. So if you're not that type of educator or you're in a different field, I'm sure it can be applied. I know like in biology, they write essays. In geography, they've got to do reports and they've got to do their research projects and things like that. They have to write at the end of the day. So we've got to keep that in mind. Whether they're writing by hand or writing by typing, they've got to be critically aware of what they're putting into their tasks. And that's our role as the educator. All right. So yes, I'm touching on that ethical use because they will use it and we will use it. But I want us to focus on the idea of the learner's voice coming through. Now, if you've marked with me at the end of the year, you know that our Umalusi moderator looks for the voice. And it has become such a crucial tool for us when we're marking, because it might look like a very simplistic essay in front of us. But if that voice is there, it's good. It actually ends up being good. All right, so we got to keep that in mind. I have written down notes, and I'm going to be the worst English teacher right now because I'm going to have a flapping piece of paper in front of me instead of cue cards. All right, but life was too busy this week for me to take it all the way. So please excuse the papers. All right, but those of you who know me know that I need a script. Otherwise, I'm going to be out all day. All right, so There should be a handout that has been passed around. All right, just keep that there to one side for now. All right, if you don't have one, just squiz over to your neighbor's side. You can have a look at it just now. I'm going to refer to it very briefly every now and then, but I'm a teacher, guys. You've got to have something in front of you. All right, and I've got to keep your attention, and you've got to walk away from here with something. You know, the kids walk away with something from a lesson. All right. Okay, so the first thing that I'm sure many of you as educators, but especially as a language teacher, we've just had fantastic presentation before. Like I said, ticked all the boxes of what we need to be focusing on in terms of AI policies and things like that. But I'm sure many of you have been given, you've been given advice, all right? Like we are doing today, we are handing out advice and suggestions and things like that from well-meaning peers, all right, who reckon that we should simply adapt our expectation from our learners when it comes to creative writing, all right? So suggestions such as changing up our task sheets. Instead of giving them a list of topics to work from, why not give them an already AI-generated essay and then ask them to edit it and to rephrase it, and then bam, it's done. Now, I don't know about you. I don't want to read the same essay multiple times, all right? And how have I actually trained their brains to be creative and to critically analyze? So yes, I can give them the AI-generated essay, and they must critically analyze it and see if it's correct and does it fulfill the purpose of the topic and things like that. But that initial imagination spark, that must be there as well. Because let's be honest, we drive around in the cars all day. We see a poster. It maybe doesn't have words on it, has an image on it. We have to use our imaginations as adults to interpret that poster. And if we're not training their brains from young already, how are they going to read a stop sign? How are they going to understand what that little funny bridge thing is on a sign when you come to a low-lying bridge? You know, the imagination comes into play. Their voice from young will guide them on that. All right. So let's be, like I've said, let's be real. All right. One of the things that is important for me here is that we need to remember that a lot of our institutions like Impaq, we develop our projects, our content, almost a year in advance. So simply telling me to go and change my task sheet is not going to be possible. All right. That task sheet change can only happen in 2028. All right. Because we have to be ahead of our clients at the end of the day as well. All right. People who are studying ahead of time because they're sportsmen, they travel around the country because they're a daughter of a celebrity. We've got to keep those things in mind. So well-meaning advice is fantastic, but isn't always applicable in our world of online teaching. All right. So many people are also forgetting that ultimately our learners in grade 12 have to sit for their NSC exams in person, in a Sakai venue, where they don't have access to a digital tool. They've got to look at a list of topics, and they've got to use their imaginations and write a 500-word essay. So at the end of the day, we've got to keep in mind what we're training them for, all right? And they're going to have an invigilator who's going to walk up and down between the desks for them, and we need to teach them the coping mechanisms to handle that moment. So it's all good and well that we have SBAs and we can use invigilator apps and things like that. 100%. We know the kids are going to still fulfill and get around those in their own way. Ultimately, as the educator, we've got to keep reminding ourselves that we're training their brains, and we have to assume that some of them are taking it in. So, and that's where I want to reassure you as well. I actually have a colleague who had mentioned it to our manager before, all right, who said that by the time we mark those essays at the end of the year, we can see the learners who have used AI the whole year, because the structure of the essays are brilliant. So is that not great? All right, is that not a good thing when they go into varsity and they now can go and generate their whole research project? They can at least make sure there's paragraphs. All right, like a simple structural thing like that. We throw a party if there's good structure. All right, so we've got to keep in mind that NSC exam at the end of the day. All right, So now I'm finally going to get to where I'm wanting to get to, all right? So if somebody's going to bring about a radical change in that NSC exam that the majority of our learners in this country have to write, only then can we actually change up what we're expecting from our learners. We can expect them to use AI, 100%. So we need to guide them on how best to use it. And I'm going to use the creative writing as my example going through, all right? So how do we make this innovation? How do we use it to empower our learners? That's the goal of my little presentation here today. I believe that empowerment lies with us as the educator. So like I said to you at the beginning, we still need the human. We still need the human. If I type into ChatGPT or Copilot how to write a narrative essay, it's in black and white, so I need to read it. Somebody's got to have taught me how to read. All right, so think about that logically. Then I'm reading it and it's in bullet points, because let's be honest, AI gives us bullet points. All right, we know that an essay should be in paragraphs. So already somebody's got to tell that kid, it's got to be in a paragraph. You can't give me bullet points in the middle of your reflective essay. All right, so keep that in mind. Our role as the educator is, I don't believe we will be replaced, because even if I have to teach with an AI tool, I'm still the human teaching that from using the AI tool. All right, so ultimately, all right, we need to get our learners to find their voice. And that's where we start in grade 4 already, when we ask them to tell us about their vakansie, all right, from grade 4, because they must tell us their memory. There's the start of their voice already. All right, so keep that in mind. I'm going to keep coming back to the voice. I'm passionate about the kids' voices. All right, so those, and we've got to remember that in the FET phase, but particularly in the grade 12s, we are working with opinions that are forming in these teenagers, and they are passionate opinions, all right? Those opinions are what's going to alter our political world eventually. If we can get enough of them if we can encourage them to direct that passion, their feelings, their emotions, their experiences, and use their words to do it, that's our job. All right, so that's how I feel. We've got to train them to find their voice and then refine their voice. And when I say refine their voice, is that by grade 12, they're not swearing in their essay, because it's the go-to, all right? And that they're not using slang, but that they're also able to get their message across to any kind of person that they might come across in society. We want learners who are able to function, and they can see a board and make sense of it and tell somebody else what that board means. Somebody taught them how to read then, and that's us. All right. So I believe that AI lacks that component, that ability to find their voice. Yes, there are AI tools where you can say, humanize this. You can tell them that I am a learner and I'm 17 years old and I'm a sports fanatic and whatever, and it can create an essay, but it still doesn't know your memories. And I'm going to come to that in a moment in my example. All right. So a couple of things that stand out for it, obviously, all right, and I'm sure as English teachers, you've come across these essays, especially in the SBAs, where they are at home and they've had time to work on it, all right? We've got the Americanized spelling, we've got those generic phrases, we've got those, my most irritating, those stepping stone phrases where it says, firstly, in conclusion, those sort of like formulaic phrases that come up in things, all right? So, take a look at the handout that I've given to you there. Please take a look at example 1 at the top. So it looks a bit lengthy, so I'll give you a couple of seconds. Run your eye over it for me, all right? I'll give you a few seconds there, all right? I'm a teacher, guys. I've got to get you active, sorry. All right, and I'm training your brains at the end of the day, all right? So take a moment there and have a look through it, all right? I know it's a bit long and I'm a bit short on time, so I'm going to jump in here already. So I'm sure you can agree with me, all right, that it's clearly AI generated, all right? So what are the red flags that have jumped at us, all right, in that one example that I've asked you there? So keep your eye on it, all right? Take note of the Americanisms, all right? We even get these at the end of the year in the NSC final. We get the Z instead of the S. That is, we've got to remember our kids are watching Netflix. They are watching American animes. They are seeing the spelling on a daily basis. But we know that we are grounded in the British spelling system. So we know the S should be there. That's my job as the teacher, to remind my kids, go change your Zs at least. All right, so we got to keep that in mind. There's a red flag, all right? You'll notice that there's the lack of the pronouns. It's very generic. It could apply to anybody, all right? That little paragraph that you've read there. Sorry, I'm just getting to my note here, guys. So what we can realize then is that the vague phrasing, the stepping stone phrases, those become formulaic. That's the term I use when I'm explaining to the kids, if I've caught them out, all right? I'm saying to them, like, just adapt it, change it up a little bit. Where's your voice in all of this, all right? So what's the result of all of that, all right? The result is that it's what we're getting in our SBAs, all right? Something that is robotic, something that is unoriginal. I cannot stress enough that by the end of the grade 12 year, when we're marking the NSC final, we must have something that sounds like it has a personality, all right? So we've got to keep that in mind. It's got to have something that has their voice in it, all right? Obviously, AI can be a powerful time saver, and that's what they should be using it for. That's what we should be encouraging them to do. Use it for its original intent to save time. All right, because we all know they're going to leave the task till the last minute. All right, we all know that they're not going to do it the 2 weeks in advance, even though you've planned it for them that way. We know they're going to leave it till the last minute. So we need to keep reminding them that we want to hear/read their voice, their thoughts on whichever topic they've chosen. Okay. So what can we do about that in our online world? I'm obviously more focused on our distance learning way of teaching. All right. So we need to keep reminding them, we got to work, our job is to work on their ability to critically analyze the topic that they've chosen, all right? And then still, believe it or not, apply the writing process when it comes to that, all right? And we all know the writing process. I'm not teaching you anything new here. They find their topic, they brainstorm it, they do a rough draft, they edit the rough draft, they write out their final piece of writing, all right? So those steps. But at certain steps, must still be their own energy. Some of those steps can be part of the AI, can be used with AI, all right? And that's what I'm going to show you now. I know I'm not, like I said to you, I'm not teaching you anything new here. If it does sound new to you, all right, and you don't know about this writing process or how to find their voice and interpret it, come mark with us in November. I'll train you up very quickly, all right? It's quick. The first morning, you'll have it, all right? Because it is there, and we just need to look for it. All right. So we know that the majority of them are going to go to AI. All right. They're going to, like I said, they're going to leave it till the last moment. So we've got to keep in mind that although they're working on their SBA tasks from January to September, we are training them for that final paper where they're writing in person. All right. So keep that in mind. So how can we do that? We do what we normally do. We give them the task sheet that has the list of topics on, and we tell them to pick their topic, and then we explain to them the blank page challenge. My idea is I always go to that idea, that blank page challenge, all right? So what is the blank page challenge? With this, we need to tell them, remind them that their markers are not just looking for good grammar. And let's be honest, our first additional language learners, that's why they're using AI. Because they think their grammar, an Afrikaans learner who's writing an English essay, they think their grammar is not good enough. So they put it into AI. Then I have a FAL learner who is speaking as if she's speaking to the Queen. All right. So do you see that critical thinking that we need to come in? All right. And that's our job to remind them of those things. All right. So the markers at the end of their grade 12 year, we got to keep telling them and start telling them from grade 9 already. We want to see an original, because they're writing in person anyway, all right? Original thought that is flowing in a logical way through their essay. So an original thought that is flowing through their essay in a logical structure. All right, so remember I said to you, AI can do a lot, but it doesn't know their memories, it doesn't know their personal experiences, and it doesn't know their family's rituals or culture or anything along those lines, all right? So what's our job? Our first job is to show them how to break the topic down, all right? Whether it's a quote or maybe a movie title or something along those lines, especially a visual prompt, because we think those are the easy ones, but they're not, all right? So we need to remind them that there are certain parts to the prompt that they've chosen, and each part needs to be assessed. It needs to be responded to in their essay. I'm telling you exactly what our Umalusi moderator tells us every year. When we're marking an essay, have they responded to all the parts of the topic? All right? AI doesn't always do that. Or it does it eventually because you've taken 2 hours now to adapt and re-put in a prompt and put in another. They may as well have written it themselves. All right? But they're not going to. So let's use AI properly then, all right? So let's jump back to that original topic, that example 1 that's on your handout there. Take a look at it again, all right? We're just looking at the topic now, all right? So I can see from that topic that they need to address the idea of having an aspiration or not, because it is grade 12s, guys, so sometimes they don't have a plan, all right? So their aspirations, all right? There also needs to be some mention of a personal mission statement in that essay. So somewhere in there must be something, what's their motto, all right, in that essay. Then they also need to somehow elaborate or make at least a mention of what they hope to achieve in that year, all right, and link it, keep coming back to the idea that it's their final year of school, because that's the topic they've chosen. All those parts need to appear in the essay. Okay, so now what? All right, so we've helped them break down the topic, all right? Now we need to encourage them to use the usual steps of the writing process. So they've got to brainstorm ideas, maybe they'll go write their draft, but we know they're not. We know they're not going to go and write that draft, all right? So we're going to jump in there with that step. So they could either make use of their usual mind mapping, the little cloudy things where they forget to put extra notes in and they just say introduction, all right, as a cloud. So they could do that, or as the teacher, we are guiding them to work out which of these techniques works best for them, because in the NSC final, they've got to show their rough work. All right, so we must empower them on which one is best for them, cloud or vertical listing. I prefer vertical listing. I list all my ideas, random. There's no order, nothing, and then I number them, which one should flow next into which one, things like that. I tell my kids that. I show them how it works for me, right? It takes time, but if they can see somebody else doing it, they feel better. It's like watching a YouTube video, all right? But it's me, the human, who's teaching them, all right? Because ultimately we want that logical flow. So then we're taking them to the actual generating. Look at the verb that I'm using there, generating the essay now, not writing their rough draft, all right? So now AI comes in. So it's here where you tell them, go and use your preferred tool. I prefer Copilot, all right? It's starting to read me, the one on my laptop, all right? We have a relationship. So it's starting to read me, but, okay, I'm going to use it because sometimes I'm feeling a little uninspired. They are feeling stressed. They're nervous. It's a FEL learner, for example, who's worried that she's not going to write enough words. She's not going to do it properly. It's going to sound like a child who's written it. So they go to their AI tool. All right. So let's just keep that in mind. Let me just go back there. Sorry, guys. All right. So what are we going to do? Remember, we've helped them break down the topic. All right. Now we're going to guide them on how to devise those shorter prompts, because too many of them go and put the whole essay topic into the AI tool and it generates the 500-word essay, copy, paste, done. Or they spend the next half hour writing it out in hand. All right. Because they must have it handwritten. Okay, so what do? We show them how to create more focused prompts based on the breakdown of the topic. So those 4 aspects of that topic that you've got in front of you, those 4 aspects, you now create their own separate prompt, because each aspect is its own paragraph. There's 4 paragraphs in the body of the essay already. All right, because one of them will be about aspirations. One of them will be about their personal statement. help them create a shorter prompt for that aspect of the topic. All right. So then, by doing that as well, you're making sure you're covering all the parts of the topic, but there's going to be some kind of flow eventually because they're creating it paragraph by paragraph. All right. And they can literally copy and paste that for now, all right, because we're going to show them how to bring their voice in at the end of it. All right. You can see that requires PT. They're not just simply putting it into AI. They actually have to critically think about it. They're going to break down the topic, takes energy. We got to train the brain for that. Then they're going to make up a prompt. There's creativity. There's the imagination already. Then they're going to get their generated response and they're going to go, yeah, that sounds good. They've critically analyzed it. All right. So we've used their brain here. All right. That takes us then to the final essay. All right. And it's here where our human job is so important. All right. Because they're going to hand an essay into you and you're going to say, where's your voice? So how do we tell them? How do we train them to get that voice there? All right. So their energy is going to be used here especially. It's actually going to require the most energy from them here. All right. So look at example 1 again. All right. I've put it up there. All right. I'm going to bring it up for you now. Read that first example that's on your handout. Look at the first few lines. All right. In your head, humanize it. All right. What are you going to do? You're going to remove some of the generic phrases and things like that. You're going to notice the Americanisms and things like that. You're going to take the pronoun and put your I or your me into it now. Okay. So you can see the difference now if you jump down to example 2. All right. Sorry. If you go down to example 2. In example 2, you'll see that we put in a my mission statement, my beliefs, my aspirations. A simple change like that already authenticates it. It makes it more human. As an English teacher, I'm still seeing a bit of a generic phrasing here, but I'm going to show you how you can personalize it further. All right. Clearly, there's the start of a voice. So now we have to get them to carry that voice through the rest of their essay. You know those little paragraphs they've generated? All right. They're going to put pronouns in. They're going to say I, me, we, when they speak of a family situation, for example. But more importantly, they must start putting in local content. If they're writing from Howick, why not mention Howick in their essay? If they're writing from the north of Karoo, why not say, here in the northern Karoo, we da 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 da. 2 aspects of human have come into that line already. All right. So putting their own setting. If they're sitting in Pretoria, say, yeah, in Pretoria, da 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 da. All right. If they're sitting in Joburg, every time I drive down the main street of my town, I'm going through a pothole. Guys, how localized can you get? All right. Then mentioning the potholes. All right. What about intertextual links? As an English teacher, it's my job to have taught them some poetry along the way. Why not encourage them? Maybe there's a line from a poem. Maybe there's a movie, a Netflix series, something that they can say, I remember watching this Netflix series, da, da, da. Immediately I have a human there, all right, when I'm reading that. Okay. So that takes me now to the visual stimuli, all right? And I'm going to get through it quickly now, all right? To the visual stimuli. This is often the most challenging for AI to help our learners with because they just pop the picture in. And then AI says, this is an image that has a man standing at 2 roads that are diverging. All right. So something like that. All right. But obviously that's not what we want. We at the end of it, remember in NSC, we're thinking of the final. We don't want them describing the picture. We want them telling us something, their voice about that image, whatever was prompted from them. All right. So this visual that I have here is actually the visual from my son's grade 12 year. All right. And I've used it because of what was the outcome. All right. And that's why I'm going to get to the end of my stuff here. All right. Obviously, being a typical boy, he realized too late after a hockey match that he had an essay due the next day. So he obviously went to his go-to and he chat GPT'd it. Don't you love that verb, guys? Chat GPT'd it. All right. However, once I showed him how to break down the topic, all right, create the shorter prompts and put that in, he realized that it would just be needed for inspiration. And then I showed him how to put the voice in. So obviously looking at that visual there, you can see that we could go in a literal way, or we could go figurative, you know, the whole like deep philosophical, I'm on my road, my journey and things like, especially typical grade 12s, guys. All right, they are deep. They have opinions and they have feelings. All right. And perhaps a sense of uncertainty because we've got the man's back to us. All right. We don't know what he's thinking. We don't know what his face looks like. All right. Things like that come into play. So when writing an image, we need to remind them to also deconstruct the image. They must brainstorm it, break it down. There was a man, 2 roads. What could it be? Is he uncertain? You know, things like that come into play. So use focus prompts like this, like the example I put here. Tell it that you want a reflective essay because my son went into that direction, the figurative meaning, all right? And tell it that it is about diverging roads that are a metaphor for life's journey, all right, as a teenager or whatever. I can't even remember the exact prompt that we put in, all right? So one of the responses that came up was students find themselves in life-changing situations. So I'm sure you can agree with me, it's very generic. Which students? Why are they there? When do they come along these situations, all right? So one of the things that I showed him was to put his voice in. He was a 17-year-old young man. All right, so you put that in. A young man, as a young man, I find myself constantly in life-changing situations for which I'm grateful. Do you see the humanization that he put into it? All right. Then you'll see that it takes it away from that impersonal, global, generic phrasing to something a bit more personal. Earlier, I also mentioned putting in some local flavor, some settings, a South Africanized setting, all right? So why not mention things that your marker, remember we are looking to manipulate the markers at the end of their grade 12 year. So why not give them something they can relate to, all right? So putting their voice in, including that idea of a local setting that your marker can relate to. So for example, one of the things that he mentioned there was we love going to Cape Town. And one of the things he mentioned was seeing the barefoot people walking around Kalk Bay. Wouldn't you like to read an essay about people who are barefoot walking around Kalk Bay? I think yeah, you see where I'm going with that. I also mentioned earlier how they should intertextualize. All right, how they can maybe relate it to things around them, all right? So here's a great example of a more focused prompt for his conclusion that we used, all right? We said, write a concluding paragraph of 50 words in a reflective style about traveling along a path that diverges. So we told it what style, we said how many words, we gave it a more focused response. And you can see there the response that came up, still a bit cold and voiceless. All right, because it doesn't know his memories and it doesn't know what movies he's watched and things like that lately. All right, so what did we do? All right, this was literally my son's final paragraph, all right, for this essay. And I want you to look at that last paragraph there. When he says, in my attempt to add meaning to these thoughts, I came across a poem by Robert Frost, The Road Not Taken. In this poem, Frost reflects on how the road of life, we reach many forks in the road that we must decide between, but we do not get the chance to travel on both. These decisions can become life-changing further along the road of life. I can only hope to travel a mixture of a road bent in the undergrowth and a road that is grassy and wanting wear. Now, those of you who know the poem know that those are 2 lines from the poem that he used. Guys, when I read this poem, this essay at the time, I was so chuffed with him, the way he had managed to put his voice into it. All right. So our job is to remind them to put that voice in, all right? So their voice, their mark. Keep that in mind. This is my final, all right? A little bit of a summary there for you. What are we asking them to do? We know they're going to use AI, but put the PT in first. Break the topic down. Help them to create their smaller prompts, their shorter prompts, more focused prompts, all right? Tell them to go use their AI now, all right? Then come back to the human. They've got to edit it. Do all the things. Take away the Americanisms, put the pronouns in, make sure it flows logically and things like that. Take away the firstly, secondly, thirdlies, please. All right. And then on your handout over there, you will see that I've left you with a practical example. All right. You can either use it yourselves just to keep your brains ticking over. All right. But I want you to think about the humanizing effect. You don't have to be an English teacher to know how to do this, all right? Because you're a biology teacher, or you're a maths teacher, or you're a geography teacher who's reading somebody else's research project. You want to hear the voice, their pronouns that come into it. Did they go and watch the man dig the hole in the ground? You know, things like that. All right. So thank you very much. All right. I'll be around if you want to chat. Okay.